Okay, ready to dive in. Today we're looking at the Ashtavakr Geeta.
Right?
So we're talking about Advaita Vedanta here, one of the
Hmm.
classics, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the really interesting texts, I think, from the tradition for sure.
Yeah, and just to kind of set the scene for folks, when we're talking about, a dialogue between a sage, Ashtavakra, and then King Jaka.
Yeah, the sage Ashtavakra and King
And
Jaka.
they get into it. I mean,
Yeah.
they really explore the nature of the self.
Yeah,
What is reality? How do we become enlightened? Like, all the big questions.
that's right. Yeah, it's really, I guess you could say the core of the text is, self-realization and freedom and how to attain it.
And what I love about it is it's not just some airy-fairy ancient wisdom,
Yeah, yeah.
It's like it has some really practical insights, I think, for navigating
Yeah,
the world that we live in today.
absolutely. Yeah. It's very much applicable, I think, to even modern day life and the anxieties and the questions that we have today.
So let's get into it. Let's unpack some of these big ideas.
Yeah.
One of the things that, jumps out right away is this concept of non-duality, Advaita.
Yeah.
What is that all about? I mean, I think it can be kind of a heady,
Yeah.
concept for people to wrap their minds around.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, the basic premise of non-duality is the idea that essentially at the deepest level of reality, there is no separation
Mm-hmm.
between the self and the ultimate reality, which in this case is referred to as Brahman. So Atman, the self, and Brahman are one.
So there's no you and me, there's no this and that. It's just all
That's right.
one big.
Yeah, at the deepest level, that's the idea. The idea is that we perceive separation and we experience separation,
Right.
And we live our lives through that lens, but ultimately it's an illusion.
It's like, okay, I love this analogy. It's like a wave in the ocean, right? It looks like a separate thing.
Yeah.
It's got its own form.
Yeah, it has a name, it has a form.
Oh, it's still water. It's still part of the ocean.
That's right, exactly. And so the Ashtavakra Gita is really about recognizing that interconnectedness, that oneness.
So how does that actually play out in our lives? Like, if we really got this, if we really understood
Yeah.
non-duality, like, how would it change
Yeah.
our day-to-day experience?
Well, the text points to the idea that suffering arises from this belief in separation.
Okay.
So, if we believe that we're separate from everything else and we're separate from, the source of happiness or fulfillment or peace,
Yeah.
we're going to constantly be striving, to try to acquire things or to become something
Mm-hmm.
to kind of fill that perceived lack.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Ashtavakra Gita says, look, when you realize this non-duality,
Mm-hmm.
then freedom naturally arises from that because, you're no longer
Okay.
looking for something outside of yourself to complete you.
Now, one thing that kind of trips me up a little bit with this, is like, okay, if we're all part of this,
Yeah.
Big unified reality,
Mm-hmm.
does that mean like my individual identity, like who I think I am? Is that just like a
Yeah.
drop in the ocean? Like, does it?
That's a great question, and it's something that comes up a lot. And the Ashtavakra Gita doesn't say that individual identity is completely meaningless.
Okay.
What it points to is there's a deeper self, there's a truer self beyond
Okay.
our limited, personalities and ego identification. So it's
Yeah.
not saying there's no such thing as, who you are,
Right.
but it's saying that who you are is much, much vaster than you currently.
Okay. So how would you like? How does the Ashtavakra Gita
Yeah.
describe that? Like, how does it describe
Yeah.
this true self?
Well, it uses terms like eternal, unchanging, pure awareness. It uses a lot of different metaphors to point to this idea that, there's something beyond our limited sense of self
Right.
that is actually, the true nature of who we are.
So this is what I find so fascinating, right? It's like, okay, so if I'm not just this limited personality,
Yeah.
who am I really? Like, how do I even
Yeah.
begin to like wrap my head around?
Yeah, that's the $1,000,000 question, right? And the Ashtavakra Gita doesn't give you a definitive,
Right.
kind of answer to that.
Yeah.
It says that, the path to self-realization is through self-inquiry,
Mhm.
through meditation, through really looking within
Okay.
and discovering that for yourself.
So it's like an experiential thing. It's
Yeah.
not something you could just read about and be like, oh, got it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's about direct experience.
Now, have you had moments in your own life, where you've kind of
Yeah,
gotten a glimpse of that, like beyond the personality?
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think everyone has these moments, where you might experience a sense of deep peace or clarity or, just a feeling of being connected to something much larger than yourself. And those are little glimpses, the text would say, of our true nature.
Okay. Now, another big idea in the Ashtavakr Gita is this concept of Maya, the illusion
Yes.
of the world.
Right.
So what's that all about?
Well, often people think that, the Ashtavakra Gita is saying that the world is not real, that it's all an illusion, and therefore we should kind of
Right.
renounce the world, and become hermits or whatever. But that's not actually what it's saying. What it's saying is that, the world is real in the sense that we experience it, but our perception of the world is colored by our own desires, our own fears, our own kind of egoic tendencies. So we see the world through a distorted lens.
It's like we're wearing these glasses that are
exactly
kind of filtering everything, and we don't even realize we have the glasses on. We're just,
right.
Seeing things through that particular
That's a great analogy, yeah.
lens.
And so, the text encourages us to become aware of that and to start to question our perceptions and to see, are we really seeing things clearly?
Okay, so that kind of ties into this idea of detachment, right?
Yeah.
Which the Ashtavakra Gita also talks about.
It does.
I mean, how do we detach in a world that's like constantly telling us to want more, buy more, be more?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a real challenge, right? I mean, we're bombarded with messages constantly to consume, to acquire, to achieve. And the Ashtavakra Gita doesn't say, go live in a cave and, give up all your possessions and have nothing to do with the world. What it says is, you can engage with the world, but don't be attached to the outcomes.
Okay.
So participate in the world, do what you need to do. But don't be so invested in the results.
Don't get your happiness from those things.
Yeah, because that's a recipe for suffering, because things are constantly changing. If your happiness is dependent on, external circumstances or acquiring things, then you're going to be on this constant roller coaster.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is it's not about renouncing the world. It's about shifting our perspective.
Yeah, shifting our perspective, understanding the impermanence of things, realizing that true happiness doesn't come from external things. It comes from within. It comes from that connection to our true nature.
So how does all of this lead us towards enlightenment? I mean, if we understand non-duality, we understand Maya, we understand detachment, where does that take us?
Well, the beauty of the Ashtavakra Gita is that it says that enlightenment is not some distant goal that you have to strive for lifetimes.
Okay.
It's actually a very simple realization.
Okay.
It's a recognition of what is already here.
Okay.
It's like, you've been wearing these sunglasses the whole time and you take them off and suddenly you're like, oh, wow, look at the colors.
Yeah.
It's not that anything changed.
Right.
It's that your perception changed.
Okay.
And so enlightenment is like that. It's not about becoming something. It's about realizing what you already are.
That's good news.
Yeah.
That makes it sound
Yeah, it is good news.
a little less daunting.
It's not, you don't have to go to a cave in the Himalayas.
Right.
You can find it right here, right now.
So if somebody's listening to this and they're like, okay, I want this enlightenment thing.
Yeah.
What are some of the practices or the steps that they can take?
Sure, yeah. So the Ashtavakra Gita encourages practices like meditation, self-inquiry, really looking at your own mind, your own thoughts, your own beliefs, contemplation, spending time in nature, letting go of attachments.
Okay.
And really trying to live fully in the present moment. So, those are some of the key.
It's like simplifying almost, right?
Yeah.
It's like getting back to the basics.
Exactly. It's, sometimes we think enlightenment is this really complex thing.
Right.
But it's actually quite simple. It's about, just being present, being aware, and letting go of what's not serving you.
Now, when you talk about meditation, I mean, what does that actually look like for you? What's your meditation practice?
So for me, it's really simple. It's just finding a quiet space, sitting comfortably and just focusing on my breath. And, thoughts come up. I just notice them and I let them go. I don't get involved in them. I don't judge myself for having them. I just, kind of watch. For me is, really powerful practice.
And you find that helps you to kind of detach and to...
Absolutely. Yeah. It helps me to just kind of calm the mind, get some perspective, and just connect with that deeper sense of peace that's always there underneath all the mental chatter.
So it's like, even if you can just carve out a few minutes a day to kind of
Yeah.
get quiet.
It's all it takes. Even 5 minutes, 10 minutes can make a huge difference in your day.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of the Ashtavakr Geeta.
I know.
But it's such a rich...
It is a rich
text, and it's so relevant, like we were saying at the beginning, to our lives today.
Absolutely.
And it's like this map almost, right? Like it's like,
yeah.
Here's the nature of reality. Here's who you really are.
Yeah.
And here's how to find...
And here's how to get there?
Your way home.
Exactly.
So I'm curious, as we're kind of wrapping up here, if you could really experience yourself beyond those limitations, beyond the personality, beyond all the stories that we tell ourselves, what do you think that would feel like?
That's a great question to ponder. What if you could let go of all those ideas of who you think you are? All those labels, all those limitations. Who would you be then?
Yeah, that's something to sit with. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Ashtavakr Geeta.
My pleasure.
And hopefully this will inspire people to maybe crack open the text themselves.
Yeah, definitely check it out.
And continue to explore these really powerful...
It's worth it.
...ideas. So until next time, happy diving.
All right, take care.
Yeah, bye.